All right, the big day has arrived, and you can commemorate that big day with a T-shirt from the Etsy store, the Razor Ray Etsy store. Just kidding. If you want to follow this channel closer, of course, I will put a link to this, but you can also subscribe to me on MailChimp, Razor Sharp News Chronicle. I don't know, I think it's still called Razor Sharp Reports, but it's Razor Sharp News Chronicle. Sign up today. Usually going to just do one a week. I think I will this week send out one early and then another one at the end of the week. But it's basically just aggregating articles, items for sale on Etsy or elsewhere, and also videos that I produce. Now, it has been wild, wild 4 years, and I would have wanted that in 2020 we would have a better alternative to Donald Trump for the people who don't like him. I personally, despite a lot of misgivings with him, the choice to vote for Trump is a lot easier for me than it was in 2016. But it didn't have to be that way. The Democrats, and I think if you are a Democrat and you voted for Joe Biden, in your head, you would have to agree with me that there could have been someone who would have been a good alternative to Donald Trump, somebody who could propose ideas that would be an alternative to the Trump agenda on issues like immigration, on issues like healthcare, and on fracking and things like that. And look, it might be that I would have still voted for Donald Trump, but Joe Biden is not that alternative because you don't know what he's going to actually do. He's reversed himself. He's reversed field several times on many things. And I don't believe that him and the Democrats have learned their lessons since 2016. But we're going to find out tonight. And I'm not even going to try to tell you what I think is going to happen apart from where I live. So I wrote this article, it got published Sunday, and it's called Is Joe Biden's Outreach to Big Ten Country a Slow Motion Fumble? And the truth is, if you go throughout the Midwest, which is the region of the country where I live in Ohio. I drove to Michigan last week. I tried to take some footage of basically there wasn't anything to shoot because there wasn't anyone outside, but I went to Oberlin College and did a little bit of filming, and maybe later I could, I'm not gonna have time, not today even, because I have to go to work because I actually have a job, unlike a lot of the people who are, they're completely obsessed with politics. They don't have anything else to do. I have to go to work today. Unfortunately, I think more of the country is unemployed now, and I could be doing better financially, but it's not even an issue of finances at this point. If Donald Trump loses this election, we're going to go back to basically a top-down management system where you have people who got their credentials from Ivy League universities, and they've always gotten ahead because they've been part of the right societies, whether it's a fraternity, whether it's one of these organizations like the Council for Foreign Relations, or whatever the reason it is, fraternities, secret societies like Bush and Kerry were, Skull and Bones. And that's one of the reasons that I think Joe Biden has a problem in the Midwest, and he could actually get swept in many of these states. I think Illinois would probably be the only state that Joe Biden should feel secure about winning tonight, and the rest of the states are going to be a real problem for him. And I go through it in this article, talking a lot about why Barack Obama and Bill Clinton did very well in the Midwest, and it's credit to them because they knew how to galvanize voters, make it seem like they're looking out for the middle class. I don't even think they did look out for the middle class necessarily. I think Clinton, let's be fair to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton's policies made the middle class in the Midwest especially prosperous. Bill Clinton, I think, will have a legacy, despite all of his illegal dealings, let's put it that way. illegality, corruption, and all of that. Bill Clinton was not bad at running the country and letting the country run itself, if you want to put it that way. Barack Obama in 2012, he won all but Indiana in the Midwest and West Virginia. If you count West Virginia and Kentucky are sometimes considered part of the Midwest, but they're not. And Missouri, by the way, traditionally in the past was considered part of the Midwest. You know, Teamster country, those states. So the states that he needed to win: Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania. Barack Obama swept all of them. It wasn't that big of a deal that he lost in Indiana. Go back to 2008. He actually did even better in the Midwest. He actually picked up a seat in Nebraska, which is bordering between the Midwest and the Great Plains, and he also won Indiana. So that, whatever you think of Barack Obama as a person and the flaws of his position and everything, he was a better candidate than many of the people that the Democrats could have fielded. By the way, he also won Florida 2 times. Florida is essential. I don't think that the Democrats are going to win Florida this year, but it's so hard to know what's going to happen, that we're going to have to really batten down the hatches. By the way, I don't know if I'm going to do a live stream. I think I will do a live stream for part of the night. I don't think I'm going to do it for the whole night. It's not easy to concentrate for a few hours, and I know, like, watching people, come in and out because you don't have exactly the focus, and there's a little dead air, and you're checking between this map and another one. I can understand why maybe people will watch somewhere else. Plus, I don't have a schedule to go on with anyone, so I will live stream for part of the night, maybe at the beginning, and then much later. So keep an eye out for that. 2004. So let's go back to the Clinton era. In 1992, Clinton actually won some of these states largely because of the split conservative ticket. Bush, by the way, lost a lot of votes because Ross Perot was running. So Clinton actually swept through the entire Midwest, including Kentucky and Tennessee, apart from Indiana. So that's how effective Clinton was in winning. By the way, he won Arkansas and Louisiana because he was a Southerner, and he actually won them 2 times. So that's the difference between the Democratic Party of the Clinton era and the Democratic Party of the Obama era up until today, when I think it's very questionable whether Joe Biden will even win any of these states in the Midwest, apart from, like, Illinois, I think would be the shocker of all shockers. If the Democrats can't win Illinois, it will be officially the biggest meltdown in the history of presidential politics. I think they will win Illinois. The Chicago area, Cook County, is too big of a nut to crack, and Minnesota, I think, is the most lofty target that the Republicans can aspire to. Other states that could, I think, flip red potentially. Now there's states that could flip blue. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, all of those could flip for Biden from 2016. The other states that could flip red, in my opinion, are New Hampshire, Maine, and possibly Nevada. Styx Hexenhammer made a video earlier claiming that it's ridiculous to think that Nevada could flip red. And while I understand his caution, in smaller states, remember, so there's only 6 electoral votes in Nevada because there aren't that many people in Nevada. So you don't need that large of a cluster of people to change their votes. I live in Ohio. We have 3 times as many people as in Nevada. New Hampshire, there's only 4 electoral votes, even less people. Maine, 4 electoral votes in Maine. They get split up, I think, might be by congressional district. So I do believe that when all is said and done, we could see states flip between these 2 candidates. We could see Biden reclaim Michigan. We could see Trump gain Maine. We could see Trump gain Nevada. We could see Biden take Pennsylvania. It's going to be a very, very unusual night, in my opinion. Anyway, so back to the article. which will be linked in the description below, and also on the MailChimp email. I go through a little bit of why I think Biden could have screwed up his Midwest, his Midwest campaign. And the reality is that why was Biden, why was Obama and Biden as a ticket so successful in winning the Midwest? Because both McCain and Romney were very out of touch with the voters in in everyday America. McCain generally was seen as, first of all, super old, and also was totally associated with mostly foreign policy issues and campaign finance, things that when there was a great recession going on, as it was in 2008, nobody really knew what he would do for the country. And therefore, I would say that he was generally looked at as, a straw man. He, like, literally a straw man. Like, McCain was the only person who could go out there and actually, pretend to run against Obama, because Obama was a freight train in 2008. And I believe Obama's vote tallies during that election were the largest for decades. I don't know if there was a higher turnout election for many years before that. Now, one of the reasons that Romney was so poor in 2012 was because he was he was a hedge fund manager, basically, at Bain Capital. I don't know if it's actually, I think they were like asset strippers. I don't remember exactly what Bain Capital does. They're still open in from what I understand, but it's not relatable to be an investment banker and a former governor, and on top of that, a Mormon. Many people have problems with Mormons. Not going to say whether it's justified or not. My thoughts on Mormonism. You're gonna hear about it in a few weeks because I'm reading a book about it. But anyway, so Mitt Romney was a terrible candidate, and Barack Obama was able to take advantage of his just out of touch, both his demeanor and his past and his record and everything. So he was an awful candidate. But the fact is that since 2012, instead of rejecting the Romneyite appeal, the type of person who says, "Oh, I'm here, I know how to make money and everything, and I know how to succeed with other people's money," the Democrats have largely become married to Wall Street. That's one of the reasons that Bernie Sanders did so well in 2016, being able to attack Hillary Clinton, because in truth, Hillary Clinton is even more Mitt Romney than he is. She had a son-in-law who was managing a failed hedge fund, and she took enormous campaign contributions from Citibank, Goldman Sachs, and other big banks and Wall Street firms. You have to remember that Clinton was a senator from New York for 8 years. She ran 2 political campaigns for Senate in New York. And she was massively married to Wall Street. And that's one of the reasons that people balked at supporting her. People had to she had to drag Elizabeth Warren into supporting her. And by 2016, people knew that she was not this populist candidate that the Democrats had traditionally gone for. By the way, her husband, one could say, was in some sense a populist candidate in the 90s. I wouldn't say he was the same type as Trump, but Bill Clinton knew how to motivate voters, and I think the Democratic Party could use someone like Bill Clinton today, because they don't have anyone like that. They owe him a debt of gratitude for what he did to the party, even though on a personal level he's probably just an abominable person, with all of his scandals and all of his corruption and everything. But they would beg to have someone like Bill Clinton or even Barack Obama running today. And to be like, let's be true, let's be honest. Barack Obama has been campaigning, and it hasn't helped the Democratic Party to feel more secure that they're going to win today. So I go through a few of the other factors that are crucial to why I think Joe Biden may be losing the Midwest today. The first issue is that there were race riots throughout the summer, as doubtless all of you know. And it started in Minneapolis, and it's gone through several of these other states where, like in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and also, yeah, so three of these states, if you look at the map, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, that Joe Biden needs in order to win, have been hit by massive riots that are probably going to, complicate his path to victory. And the truth is, if you look at the record on the unrest, Biden and Harris have a more checkered past. Like, you don't know. At some points, they were very, very supportive of the protests slash riots slash demonstrations. At other points, they started to turn against them and say that this is rioting, this is violent, and everything. So a muddled message isn't as successful as a clear one. Now you could make the case, if you're one of these people who's Machiavellian, you could say, well, it's always good to have a poker face, have people sort of guess what you are going to do, because maybe they have this glass half full attitude, because they're so alienated by Trump that they say, well, whatever the case, Biden is going to be better on this issue than Donald Trump. And there are people like that out there. I think, for example, John McWhorter, who I think is in other aspects of his work, he's one of the most brilliant people that's in academia, one of the last honest academics out there. But he just has this attitude as if Donald Trump is incapable of managing the situation because of his personality. Therefore, he's going to trust Biden to do it. It's cognitive dissonance on just an amazing level from someone that you truly expect more from. It says in Minnesota, polls that up until July showed Biden above the 50% mark find him at 48% as of this writing. Now let's take a look at it this morning, if there is any. Minnesota. So this is a real clear politics average. Is tilting for Biden at 4.3. So it's narrowed even sharper from when I started writing that article. And look, it could be that Biden will lose this state, which hasn't voted GOP since 1972. Now, is it going to be enough in the waning days of the campaign to push Trump over? There's no way to tell. Plus, you have to factor in all of the vote, what do you call it? The ballot harvesting that James O'Keefe was exposing in Minneapolis on the part of the Ilhan Omar campaign. So basically, this BLM issue, the issue of the critical race theory, the issue of the riots, of now Kamala Harris apparently. So this is just in the past couple of days, she issued a video about how we don't want equality, we want equity, and all of that. That is, like, are there any voters left for her to turn off with that? I don't know. It's a good question, because a lot of people they've been oversaturated for the past 4 years with political news, and it could be that it's way too late for anything to move the needle. And by the way, so this article, so I know there might be somebody who has already written a comment because they're already 18 minutes into the video. They're going to be asking, why aren't you going to mention the Hunter Biden situation? Why aren't you going to mention the New York Post story and everything? Those stories, I think, are penetrating with a certain type of voter. But that's not the main reason why he would lose the Midwest. Yes, there are people here in the Midwest that are conscious of what's happening, what the whole Biden scandal and the Hunter laptop and the Rosemont Seneca and there's no one more aware of that than myself. I've read all the Peter Schweitzer books. I think he's one of the greatest investigative journalists of the past 20, 25 years. But that's not why you lose an election, right? Especially not with media censorship and the way that the news is curated by these networks and newspapers. Then the other issue that people have to remember is that in parts of the states that I live in, the state I live in and the states that are part of this region called the Midwest, trade is more than a reason why people will swing from one one candidate to another. If you support free trade in the Midwest, or you support right to work, or you support any of these, policies that are perceived to harm union manufacturing jobs, it's a problem. And I can tell you that one of the only reasons that our Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown was reelected in 2018 was because he's consistently fought free trade. I think he was against NAFTA back when it was happening. That was a long time ago. He was against the TPP. Sherrod Brown was against, all of the different free trade agreements of the past 3 decades, and that's why he got reelected. If he would have been for any of those, he would have been swept out, because Democratic voters are not going to vote for a free trade Democrat, a corporate Democrat. They over here in the Midwest, and I think that by supporting the TPP, which Biden did, by voting for NAFTA, okay, and I go through a lot of it. By voting for NAFTA, he had, he should have never been competitive here. And there are people who say that his reputation as Lunch Bucket Joe, Mr. Working Class, like Joe, Dan Bongino laughs at him. He calls him the Scranton Kid, and other people have called him the Scranton Scrapper in the past. In reality, there's no evidence to show that Joe Biden was ever that popular among factory workers and Midwesterners. He like, for example, in 1988 and 2008, he ran in primaries and he just didn't do well at all. And people are like, they should probably ask, like, who started calling him these things? Like, I don't know who started calling him Lunch Bucket Joe. I've heard from people about it that was a nickname he had, or he himself. I think I've heard him say things like, "Oh, in the Senate they call me Middle Class Joe," and things like nobody actually does that. And I would say that this is just an affectation that he's taken on in order to appeal to the middle class, and it hasn't actually worked. Here is his interview with Jake Tapper. I don't think that this interview did him any favors.
So you asked, and what did he do after he got elected? And you brought up the tax bill. Something else he did is he renegotiated NAFTA.
He did.
He renegotiated NAFTA. Now, when you ran for president and when Barack Obama ran for president, you both said you would renegotiate NAFTA. You didn't. He did. Nancy Pelosi said that the USMCA, which President Trump signed into law, is a, quote, victory for America's workers. Does he deserve credit for that?
No, I think, remember, he wasn't the one that pushed that particular one to pass.
So he's basically saying, well, he did it, but he doesn't deserve credit for it. That's Joe Biden. The things you do that are bad, like his crime bill that he knows now hurt him among some black voters, right? Those things he doesn't want to take responsibility for. But he also doesn't want to give credit to Trump for things that he agrees were good that Trump did.
The House amended the bill so he couldn't.
He signed it.
By the way, it's a big deal, though. Here's what they amended. He was giving pharma a way out, giving them a gigantic break, just like he's doing now with pharma. They're building plants overseas and getting tax breaks for it. That's what it was about with him, and they said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to.
He renegotiated NAFTA, and you didn't. Is the point? I mean,
because we had a Republican Congress that wouldn't go along with us renegotiating.
So this is Jake Tapper telling him, and the whole point that, like, I don't know if they get into it, but the whole point, he had a Republican Congress to help. No, Joe Biden is actually lying here. The USMCA passed under Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. Trump did not have a Republican Congress, right? Joe Biden could have negotiated NAFTA with the Republicans running the House between 2010 and 2014, but he didn't. Him and Barack Obama. That's the fact, Jack. And by the way, they passed NAFTA. This is something that Democrats never, ever, ever acknowledge. So NAFTA, okay, was passed in 1993 by a Democratic Congress, okay, and was signed by a Democratic president, okay. It says So, the U.S. required its partners to adhere to environmental practices and regulations similar to its own. After much consideration and emotional discussion, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the North American Free Trade Implementation Act on November 17, 1993. The agreement supporters included 132 Republicans and 102 Democrats. The bill passed the Senate on November 20th, 1993, 61 to 38. Senate supporters were 34 Republicans and 27 Democrats, including Joe Biden. Clinton signed it into law on December 8th, 1993. So the Democrats had every opportunity to obstruct and end NAFTA, which was originally brokered under George W. Bush, and they didn't do it. In fact, they ended up passing the policy that they probably campaigned for in 1992 to oppose, the NAFTA agreement. So they've betrayed their voters. And by the way, I am not one of these union people. I'm actually against unions in most cases. I'm not one of these people who's a protectionist so much, even though I think I've come along to rejecting a lot of the free trade extremism that I think people like Gary Johnson were proposing. But trade is something where the Democrats have for sure betrayed their voters.
Negotiating it.
But doesn't he deserve some credit for that? It's better. The USMCA is better than NAFTA.
It is better than NAFTA. But look what the overall trade policy has done even with NAFTA. We now have this gigantic deficit in trade with Mexico. Not because NAFTA wasn't made better, but because the overall trade policy and how he deals with it made everything worse.
I guess my only point is I'm a blue-collar guy sitting in Macomb County, Michigan, if I were that person.
Yep.
And I'm sitting here listening to your pitch. And I'm thinking, I like what he has to say, but he's part of the establishment that's been selling my jobs down the river. He supported NAFTA. He supported most favored nation status for China. And Trump did negotiate NAFTA, and Obama and Biden didn't.
Well, I'll tell you what we did do. We inherited the greatest recession short of a depression. The president put me in charge of that to do something about it. In the process of that, I was the one who was given responsibility to make sure General Motors and Chrysler didn't go bankrupt. And so we made sure they didn't. Brought 80,000 jobs here to Michigan and to the automobile industry. 80,000 good paying jobs came back. He's lost 50,000 of those jobs since he's been president. The fact of the matter is NAFTA was not the deal that was sold. When Bush said we were going to have enforcement mechanism in NAFTA, they didn't do it. That's why after it passed, and he did not insist on that, I was against NAFTA, and we tried to begin to change it because it didn't keep the deal that was made. There was not the enforcement mechanism were abandoned. And so, but look, here's what else he's doing. We're talking about.
This is just a dishonest rereading of history. NAFTA passed under Bill Clinton with the Democratic Congress, both houses. And him running away from this issue is just another detail of the past that Joe Biden lies about. And I think so. I wrote here that he had initially supported NAFTA, but that George W. Bush had not carried out his commitment to NAFTA. I think he might have been referring not to George W. Bush. Maybe he was referring to George H.W. Bush. But George H.W. Bush only negotiated the agreement. He didn't get it. He didn't shepherd it through Congress, and he didn't sign it. So it's all on the Democrats for, if that's the case, for passing and then signing a bill that they supposedly didn't support. Those are all issues that I think are going to be big ones in terms of trade. Another thing is that his whole notion, I'm the lunch bucket Joe, whatever, and those there have been candidates in the past that campaigned on that, like Hubert Humphrey and Al Gore, and even Biden 2 times in 1988 and 2008, and they didn't win. Gore, by the way, people don't remember this, but Gore ran in the 1992 Democratic primary and was just crushed in it. He didn't make any headway. Another thing that I remember happened was this, during the election, there was an attempt by the Democrats to take advantage of the fact that football seasons were being canceled, including the Big Ten football season. There was this ad that purported to show that all these stadiums are closed and everything, and then Donald Trump during that same period renegotiated with the Big Ten and got the season rescheduled, and we're actually seeing the Big Ten. We're now, next week's going to be, this coming week, is the third week of the Big Ten season. And it's largely due to the efforts of the Trump administration and a number of the minority of sports media figures, I should say, like Clay Travis, like Joel Klatt, who lobbied extensively to have the season go forward because the COVID-19 pandemic, whatever you want to call it, however much you think that it's a civilization killer, people who are in the prime of their youth and have peak physical condition generally don't have any problem overcoming the virus, even if they contract it. And even Nick Saban, the coach of Alabama, was able to recover in a very short period of time from the virus. Now, another pitch that he's made in order to appeal to, I guess, this constituency, people who are Republican dads, people who maybe, they're fiscally conservative or socially conservative, and, they're traditional GOP voters, is he's enlisted the help of a few GOP governors in order to help him. Former GOP governors, people who served in the past 20 years or 30, I think Tom Ridge was even before that, as governors of Midwestern states. So they're Tom Ridge, John Kasich, and Rick Snyder. All three of these people, I think, are real problems for the Democratic Party. And I'll explain why. Tom Ridge is associated with the Bush administration as the first Homeland Security Director. And he also is largely, if you're one of these anti-war Democrats and you remember the period of Guantanamo and all of those issues, like Tom Ridge is a no-no for you. So if you're voting for Joe Biden today, knowing that Tom Ridge endorsed him, I think you have to at least consider it a problem that he has people like Tom Ridge in his pocket. He also, by the way, has been a big supporter of fracking and in the past. So his support for Joe Biden is basically, it's a middle finger to the left of the Democratic Party, the left anti-war Democrats and the left environmentalist anti-fracking Democrats. And fracking supporters now call Ridge a turncoat for backing Biden. So I think that his support from Tom Ridge is actually a net negative. So these governors, after they leave office, they don't necessarily conserve their popularity, right? Especially Republicans. Republican governors, once they retire, they seem to just fade away and end up being on corporate boards or regents of universities and things like that. They don't typically have much staying power in politics. Does anybody know what's happened to Scott Walker or Tim Pawlenty? Or, the best example of a Republican governor who's had a successful career after office is Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was famous before that for stuff that had nothing to do with politics. John Kasich, I think, is another example of these guys who they're not going to add any votes to Biden. There's not going to be many Republicans who are going to vote for Biden because John Kasich said so, and they weren't going to vote for him before Kasich endorsed him. Kasich was very successful getting elected here because the Democratic Party was extremely weakened in 2010 with the Tea Party election, and he immediately lost a lot of his support through Senate Bill 5, which again is another one of those policies that was a middle finger to unions. Senate Bill 5 would have made Ohio a right-to-work state. Public sector unions would have been basically neutralized here. I supported it, by the way. I don't think we should have public sector unions, and I think that they make the state governments much more expensive and much more. They just spend like crazy here. But in any case, within a year there was a ballot measure that repealed it, and it was the biggest defeat of his term. And he was actually very lucky that the Democratic Party never rebuilt afterward after his initial victory, and they were very weak in 2014, and he easily won a second term by a landslide. But in 2016, he ran for president, and it was pretty obvious that he was this paper tiger. People kept saying he would do well in the Midwest in states like Michigan and Indiana and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. He was just a blip on the radar. Okay, he won Ohio largely because the anti-Trump vote coalesced around him in Ohio because they knew he could win here, and then everywhere else he was a dud. So yeah, John Kasich I don't think is going to help him. And the final one is really interesting. You have Rick Snyder. So Rick Snyder um, was the governor of Michigan. I think somebody mistakenly. I don't think it was me, but I think the editor might have relabeled it Rich Snyder. But he was governor of Michigan from 2011 until 2019. And Snyder is known primarily for the Flint water crisis. So this is another issue where Democrats, especially on the far left, will say, you know what? Why is he trying to get these Republicans, these people that we've opposed for they were opposing Rick Snyder when Rick Snyder was in power because Rick Snyder was opposing Obama and Biden, right? And they're now saying, well, everybody that you said was bad when you were vice president, suddenly you think it's good that you have them on your side. It doesn't make any sense. And yeah, he's actually said that he might put Republicans like John Kasich and tech CEO Meg Whitman, who ran for governor in 2010, and lobbyist Charlie Dent into his cabinet. So I think that these are all reasons that he could mess up and lose parts of the Midwest. Now, as far as the states themselves are concerned, I think, I went through, I drove through a few counties yesterday in Ohio, and also last week I drove to Michigan. So I've been through a few counties in Ohio. I don't see much enthusiasm for Joe Biden, apart from in northeastern Ohio. That would be Cuyahoga County up here, and a little bit in Lorain County, a little bit, and it was actually pretty underwhelming. I was in Oberlin, and I think that that Donald Trump will handily win Ohio. I was in three other counties yesterday driving. I was in Geauga, Lake, and Summit counties, and it doesn't look like Biden actually has surprisingly robust support in parts of Lake County and parts of Geauga County, but I don't think that they're actually there's actually much more Trump support out there. There's many more Trump signs, but you do see Biden signs. That's what I'm trying to say. Summit County, which is where Akron is, we can look at. Um, so here, there's a county by county map. So you can actually see this is the way the state typically votes. So this is Cuyahoga County where I live, and this is Lake County. So I was in Lake County yesterday, mostly Donald Trump, some Hillary Clinton. Geauga County, same idea. Summit County is over here. I drove through. There was also a fair bit of there was a mixture there. And this is Lorain County over here. You do see a little bit more Hillary Clinton support in the northern part or in the center. This is where Oberlin is. The idea that Joe Biden can actually rely on any of these counties except for Cuyahoga is laughable. I think he's going to have a fight to keep his support in even the counties that Hillary Clinton won in 2016. That would include Mahoning, Summit, and Lorain County. But I think that I've given the most complete picture I can today of the states. Now, the other three states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, I think those are going to be the big question. Pennsylvania, I am going to, go out on a limb here. I think Trump's going to win Pennsylvania. I think he could win Michigan. I'd be a little surprised if he won Wisconsin and Minnesota. That's about it. Remember to sign up for the newsletter. That's going to be the first link. Remember to check out the story. That's going to be the second link in the description. All these links are going to be in the description. And also the Etsy store. You can get your Harris Biden t-shirt, right? And I think one of my users on BitChute, one of my subscribers, longtime subscribers on BitChute, has already ordered that one. That one is in production, by the way, whoever you are. I know his name. I'm not going to say it. You also have the Chelsea Handler You Ain't Black t-shirt featuring her former boyfriend, 50 Cent. And, okay, you have the Amy Coney Barrett t-shirt. There's also another version of the Harris Biden t-shirt in there. So that's great. Have a wonderful election day, and I hope you come out of it safe.